Among Chuck Todd's questions was this.
Should your faith matter to voters?
Well, I guess it depends on what that faith is. If it's inconsistent with the values and principles of America, then of course it should matter. But if it fits within the realm of America and consistent with the Constitution, no problem.
So do you believe that Islam is consistent with the Constitution?
No, I don't. I do not. I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not.
Again, that's Ben Carson responding to a question from Chuck Todd yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press. My question for you is, in Ben Carson making that statement, what do you think that says about his candidacy? And do you think this is going to hurt his campaign or not? Also with us is the president and co-founder of the Muslim Public Affairs Council here in Los Angeles, Salam Al-Marayati. Salam, good to have you with us again. Good morning.
Thank you, Larry.
Your concerns about what Ben Carson said yesterday?
Well, other than that, what he said was unconstitutional and flies in the face of all of our values of America. And it's the most anti-American thing you can do, is to scapegoat and distort the faith of millions of Americans. And if Mr. Jackson is a true friend and consultant to Mr. Carson, then I suggest he do two things. Number one, he rescinds what he said about Muslims and Islam in the media yesterday. It's very simple, and clarify his position on the Constitution. And number two, he should meet with Muslims. I think if anyone would make the best assessment, it would be American Muslims on this issue, and also, if he's very concerned about this community, which apparently he has some preconceived notions about American Muslims, then what better way to alleviate these misapprehensions than to meet with them and then to come out, hopefully, in more agreement and to move on. It's going to be the American public who will decide whether Mr. Carson is or is not fit to even be a candidate for the presidency. But I think it's time that we have dialogue between our two communities to alleviate some of these misapprehensions and also to end this use of Muslim as a slur, accusing the president of being a Muslim like accusing him of being a criminal or of lying. This is just intolerable, and unfortunately every presidential election season or congressional election season for that matter, we see the spike in this kind of rhetoric, and that happens too often. But I think it's time to have dialogue to move on to, as Mr. Jackson said, to other important issues.
One of the things he said was, in clarifying his remarks later, that the Quran was not compatible with the Constitution, that in Islam you have to be devoted to the Quran as opposed to the U.S. government. So sort of loyalty is called into question, and also treatment of women were raised. Salam, you want to respond to those two issues?
It's ridiculous. I mean, he has obviously a distorted view of Islam. He probably watches too much of Fox News. And gets all his information about Islam and Muslims there, or tabloid journalism. This is what they said about Catholics 50 years ago when John Kennedy was running for president, is that, who's he going to be more loyal to, the Pope or the United States Constitution? And Catholics came and made it very clear that their values and American values are compatible, and Jews had to do the same thing to show Jewish values and American values as compatible. American Muslims are now in that spotlight, but nobody's asking us directly, other than this show. I haven't seen any American Muslims on networks talking about how American values and Islamic values are not only compatible, but we feel that American Muslims and Islam in America is one of those shining spots in the world. With all the darkness of war and terrorism, at least American Muslims and our fellow Americans are doing something for peacemaking, are doing something to end extremism, are doing something to promote civic engagement. That's really where the question should be. Yeah. Otherwise, you can say that the Bible is not compatible with democracy. I mean, anybody can make such a non sequitur. It's not the point. The point is, how do we promote more involvement of all Americans to deal with the issues of the day?
And one thing, I want to go back to the point you made about it being unconstitutional. Ben Carson didn't say that a Muslim American should be barred from being elected president. He said he personally would not advocate for a Muslim being elected president. So to just clarify, he wasn't talking about invalidating the Constitution.
Larry, I mean, that's what hedging is that you're not really saying you're for or against, you're just saying it depends. And so he made a statement, he can't rescind, and so now he's hedging. And the question to him is, Andre Carson, Keith Ellison are two American Muslims in the U.S. Congress. If they ran for president, would he support them? And I hope the answer is yes, because if it's no, then he's not even supporting people that have already devoted their lives to uphold the Constitution, have made that sacred oath with the American people. And if we can't move our pluralism forward, then what's the point of these presidential debates? What's the point of all this talk about how these people are going to help promote change for America? I hope it's positive change for America, not moving backwards to the days of the KKK running for office and telling us that African Americans should not be running for office.